topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Hi, welcome to Chasing Purpose. I'm your host, Kathleen Conner. And if this is your first time here today, I'm glad you found your way in. And if you've been here before, well, welcome back. We have a doozy of one today. So grab your pen and paper and maybe a drink. I'm not promoting alcohol, but whatever you'd like. It's only 11 o'clock here. So we're going to talk about something deep today. We're going to talk about the word and action of love. And you need to know it and use it as a verb. And we all learned in third grade, and that was many decades ago for me, that a verb is a doing word. It's an action word. It's run, it's build, it's create, it's choose, fight, stay, leave, reach, and then return. It's those kinds of words that promote action. And a verb requires something or someone that you do something. It doesn't just sit there, it moves. It demands also a subject of someone to do something. And most of the time, it needs someone or an object on the other side to receive and do something as well. So love is a verb. Many of us know it as a noun, but today we're going to talk about what the love is a verb means. And that moment that you actually start treating it like a verb, like an action that we do every single moment and every single day, and you stop accepting it as a noun, it's freeing. It's a thing that someone can claim that you do your entire life. And once you're there in the doing, the action of love, it reorganizes and centers everything. And here's what what no one ever told you, is that love is not something that you have, that you possess, although that's probably how we were raised, right? Love is something we do, and it's worth doing, and it's worth doing well. We don't always do it well, and we're not perfect, but it is something worth trying and doing and acting in and for and with. So this is where everything we're going to talk about today and everything you're going to want to take notes about. I want you to think for a second about how you've been taught in defining love, maybe your whole life, and where the definition maybe came from. Was it in the movies or the books? Was it from your parents or patterns that you saw growing up? Relationships that maybe helped you evolve or maybe just wrecked you and brought you to your knees? And maybe the one that saved you. Most of us have never actually stopped, even for a second, to examine the definition of how we're operating in love, with love, and for love. We just absorb it. We just take it for granted. And somewhere between the fairy tales, the stories that we read at bedtime, and maybe the first person that actually broke our hearts, we formed a definition of love. And that has been running our lives ever since. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about the word love. And we're going to talk in another episode about conditional and unconditional love and what those two things mean. And even when it's not working, we'll talk about that. But today we're going to talk about the verb, the love, the action. And when it keeps producing the same results when we're treating it like a noun, even when everything in us knows that something feels off, we still can't break that pattern. Well, today, we're going to teach you how to do it. Today, we're going to take that definition and pull it apart. We're going to build a new one that actually works. And here's a question I want you to sit with. When you think about someone who has actually loved you, or someone you have actually loved, what did that love feel like? What did it mean to you? What did it actually do with you, for you, and with you? Not what did they say, what did they do, or did in maybe gifts or in presents, but what did they do that made you feel it? Not the beginning of a relationship, the honeymoon phase, or when everything is electric and magnetized and everything is new. Not in that moment. But what is it? It's the consistency. It's not just showing up in being present in the same house or the same room with someone. People often think that that's love, is being there, is is being in that role of a husband or a wife or a parent or a child. It's not just being present. It's not the traditional roles. We're breaking out of the traditional roles of relationships and turning them from a traditional pattern that we were raised with, that we do it because everybody else has, right? When your kids want to do something or we want to do something, I often think of, well, everybody else is doing it, so we might as well. Well, it's not what needs to happen, especially with love. We need to find out what love as a verb means for us, with us, and to us, because love lives in time. It has a past, a present, and a future. And most of us, if we're just being completely honest, we've been accepting love only as the one tense that we're used to, the past, and we're calling it enough. The past is the record, is the things that we thought was love, the thing we experienced maybe as love. And it wasn't a lie. Everybody did their best with what they had, but maybe it wasn't enough, even though we called it enough. It's when most of us are just busy and listening and just being present. That's not what love is. Love is action. Love is doing. Love is showing up. Love is taking accountability. When someone says that we've hurt them, it's not defending our position as to, I didn't hurt you or I didn't show up in the way that you think that I did. It's listening to someone's feelings. It's understanding what they're telling you about what the experience meant for them and not defending. It's taking accountability enough to a lot of people, and I'm not generalizing, a lot of people have a hard time apologizing because they can't see the other side, because they feel as though maybe the other person is overreacting. And what they really need to feel is and understand is what the person is telling them that they felt, and that they don't need to judge that feeling by being defensive. And maybe just a I understand or I'm here can make up for the lack of apology. Maybe it's just, I understand. I'm listening to you. I'm hearing what you say. I will do better, be better, try differently. It's not trying more. We've been talking about that, and I've really been hopping on the more versus different. It's doing things differently. It's doing things different than what we have been doing. It's not more of them. It's not showing up more and more time and more presence and in more being. It's being different with how we show up and how we engage in listening and being an active listener. And when someone says that they're hurt or that they feel safe and they feel vulnerable, that those are gifts that someone gives you. That's a true treasure, that someone is able to be vulnerable with themselves and with you to tell you, wow, that hurt, or that feels great, or we're doing things well right now, or I can improve as well. So those are the things that really validate what love is as a verb means. So it's valid reasons to not perform as our parents or our grandparents or our siblings do or our friends do when we're in a relationship. That everybody looks to how they appear outside of things instead of how it feels inside of things. And I think that we take that for granted, that we're always trying to change other people And when we represent or we talk about like our hurts, our vulnerabilities, our desires, our needs, that we want someone to step up and do something about them. And yes, we do. But what we really want them to do is just listen, to be heard and seen and felt, because that's the experience. That's what love is. It's the action of being in the experience with each other. It's the action of feeling valued and showing value in your other person that's in your life, your partner, your children, your coworkers, all of that. It's showing them that they matter because you're listening and you're caring. And not only are you caring enough, but you're caring enough to be of action differently than more. So it's not the grand gesture. It's not the gifts. It's not those things. My parents, I grew up, as you know, in a big family. There were 7 of us, 5 brothers and 1 sister that I had. And my parents did everything they could with the best of their ability. Their knowledge and their emotional capacity was what they had and what they learned. And they grew up on the same street as each other. They were childhood sweethearts, and they grew up and lived on the same street, built a house on the same street, and passed away on the same street. My mother was born in the house up the road from where we were raised. We had generations around us, grandparents, both sets of grandparents next door to the house my parents built. My grandparents lived upstairs and downstairs from each other. We actually called them Grandpa and Grandma upstairs and Grandpa downstairs. And we had aunts and uncles and cousins all up and down the road. And that's what was safe and great, but that was their experience. They didn't travel a lot. They didn't have a lot of money, and they gave us experiences. My father loved to bring us to car rides and show us things and have us be curious and encourage our learning and those types of things. But my father didn't have a lot of money or any money growing up. And so he was often told us stories about Christmas and how it was maybe not filled with gifts as children want, but maybe just kind of dinners and family time. And of course, kids didn't appreciate that because what they wanted under the tree was gifts. And so as children growing up, or as kids growing up, my parents gave us not a lot of gifts, probably in relative terms to him, to his childhood, a lot of gifts. But that's how they showed us their love. Their love was about giving us experiences and gifts, and having Christmas be abundant with things, maybe material things, not so much. I mean, and I'm not saying expensive things. They didn't buy expensive things, but it was just a lot. It was a lot. And sometimes my sister-in-law and I are great people and great friends, but we're 9 years apart from each other. So 9 years is a big gap between siblings, and especially when you're the only 2 girls. It seemed like we were generations apart. She was at a different cycle in her life than I was, and I never could quite catch up to her social cycle or to her interest, and nor did she want to step down into mine. No wrong or right there, just a fact. And we are close in some of our commonalities and interests, but we are worlds apart also in our interests and in our views and in our maybe our lifestyle a little bit, maybe. And again, no judging, no right or wrong. But as children, we were, again, she was different, 9 years, right? But we often received the same Christmas present. So we had to watch the boxes that we opened. So we opened them at the same time. And it might have been a nightgown or a shirt of some sort. Again, nothing expensive, or vastly abundant. But it was, she always seemed to lean towards the red. I always seemed to lean towards the yellows and the pinks. And so when we received the nightgowns, it was the same nightgown or same pajamas, just different colors. And so I was often, now as an adult looking back at that it was my parents' way to show us that they were taking care of us, that they were providing for us. And that was their sign of love. And when I think about my parents, my mom was very, I don't know if adamant is the right word, but strong in her convictions about her love. She loved my father. That was it. loved my father. That was their relationship came first. And we knew it as kids that that was what was important to them and certainly important to her. And she also loved her house. That was important too. My mother kept a great house. She was one of the best jobs that she ever had in her life was a window dresser for one of the department stores back there. And she loved that. She talked to me about it quite often, how she loved to dress the mannequins and loved to dress the windows with the latest designs. And my mother brought that talent back into our house and into things that she loved. She would just, even the littlest of knickknack or the littlest of things, she loved. And she loved to decorate her house and change it and change the furniture and do all of those types of things. And the house was built in the mid to late 50s, I believe. And I remembered seeing photos of a photographer coming to our house and the photos that they took for our house to be in a magazine. And that's how much my mother loved the house. She was so proud of it. And so proud because they didn't have any money as kids and weren't raised with any money as kids, that they were able to build their own house. Again, it's such pride to build their house, as most people didn't have the opportunity to do in the 50s, of course, but they did with the help of, I'm sure, of their siblings. I know my father's brothers helped to build the house. But that was, again, I'm getting off topic, but those things, my mother loved us as children as well. But I think in order of, it was my father, and then we came a close second, maybe even a third. The house came, and then us as kids came as a group. I know she loved us all and expressed that. And I remember when I went away and lived away for the first time, I lived away at college, but when I really moved away and get through my independence, I was in my early to mid 20s, and I was going through therapy at the time. It was my first experience with therapy, and I was really working hard. David was my therapist and still a great friend at this time. And I was peeling the onion back, and I realized that when I say peeling the onion back around layers, it's not only layers within ourselves that we're finding our core being, but we're also finding and peeling back the layers of the relationships that we have and had. So David and I spent a lot of time around love, and love being an action as opposed to a noun. So I learned early what love was supposed to mean and how it was supposed to be presented and lived. And those were things that I always strive for. And even as an adult now, I teach my son about love. I love to have a loving relationship with everybody I have a relationship with, but it's of action. It's doing, it's being there, it's being present. It's being in love with the word and action of love. And so those are things that we have to think about. So that was the past that I talked about with love and the gifts and the being of presence, and my parents doing things that proved and showed that they loved us. And then, future love is a lot of things. It's about attention. You have a relationship and the person gives you or you give them attention. You are there for them. You send the chat, you send the text, you send the cards, you send the flowers when it's appropriate. But attention doesn't often mean intention. So the future love in action is intention, it's direction, it's movement. That's what love in action is for the future. It's in movement, it's intention, it's direction. So an example or a metaphor that I use is when you get in a cab, you don't just tell the driver to drive, right? That would be nonsensical to just get in the cab and say drive. You need to give it direction. You need to give the driver a way to go, your destination, right? So love works the same way. It's showing up is not just doing enough. You have to know where you're taking the emotion, the relationship, the person that you're in the relationship with. Where are you going with it, right? So clarity and conversations and communications have to be pointed towards something where you're working in alignment together, right? I use the analogy quite often in other podcasts that I've talked to you about, is that we stand shoulder to shoulder as equals in a relationship, whether it's with our children. And I know a lot of people come from traditional backgrounds that, the parent, the mother, the father have to be in control and the authoritative figure and the disciplinarian or the one that provides structure. Yes, to a degree, but we have to stand shoulder to shoulder with whomever we're in a relationship with and have an equal participatory action relationship so that we can have action in our communication and in our love and in our lives, right? Staying stuck and staying stagnant isn't about action. Of course, it's the opposite, right? I talk about comfortable complacency. Well, that isn't love, in my opinion, is staying with or in a relationship that is stuck or not growing or not evolving. That's not what we need. So we need to stand side by side with people as a team, right? When you see a team of the World Series baseball, I'm a huge baseball fan, I'm a huge sports fan, but if you see any team start any type of game, they stand shoulder to shoulder, right? Before they go out on the field or as they're getting announced, they stand shoulder to shoulder for the national anthem, right? As a team, as equals, right? You may have a superstar, but they need to work as a team. And that's how relationships need to be. You need to be an equal and as a team in action. So it's about choosing the direction that you're heading in conversations, in your reaction, in your behavioral patterns, and a direction with purpose, right? So that's what that is. So we talked about the past. You know what the present love is, that you need to be present, but presence in the same house and in the same car or out sitting on the same couch or watching the same TV show isn't action, right? I mean, you could sit next to someone your whole life and share a meal, every meal with them and be present, but are you present with action in your emotions? So that's something to think about. Think about that. Think about the past, the present, and the future love. And think about how you were raised in a loving relationship and what you received from it that felt good and what you received from it that didn't feel so good. So take the good with you and leave the bad, acknowledge it, because that's who helped us be who we are, right? Is all of it, the all encompassing good, bad, and ugly of every relationship that we have. But we learn, and with intention, we bring the good with us. So it's not about leaving the past behind or today is today and we look for the future. It's about all of it. It's about all three. It's not doing and recognizing that we're just living in a la la land or being so optimistic and trying to push everything towards the future and living in a dream state. That's not healthy either, right? It's about remembering the good from the past, the today that we want to work towards, the 1% better that we want to be today in action with love, for love, and in love, I guess, with somebody and with ourselves so that we can move forward in the future with a positive, loving experience and how someone gives you those things. So love living only in the past is nostalgic. And should have great memories. Love living only in the present with no intention is just company. That's just a nicety, right? It's nice to have people touch base with us, care about us, show us something, right? Be consistent with us. And loving only in the future is a promise. It's a dream, right? It's potential. And someday it can be the most important and illusional, seductive vision of what the future can be, and we can manifest it. We can work towards that future. But you have to remember to stay grounded in today and in the past, the good of the past, and because the attention that you're giving yourself in every relationship that you perform in as an equal, shoulder to shoulder, is what's going to change love from a noun to a verb. right? That's what we need to do. It needs to be a verb. It needs to be of action, in action, with action, right? Those are the things that are important to us with love. And so I think today what you want you to really take away from is that, we think about how you were raised, or your vision of love, and where that came from, where the feeling came. And is it something that you want something different? Again, not more. You don't, it's okay to want more, but asking for more from others when they don't understand it and you can't explain it is like getting in the cab and just saying drive, right? What we want people to do and ourselves to do, if we're not receiving and feeling validated within ourselves or from others, is to help ourselves and others understand how they can be different with us, right? We can tell them, like, hey, that didn't land well. That didn't feel well. That didn't feel good. I didn't like that comment or that tone or that inflection that you used. And they may get defensive. I hope that they don't. And when they do, you don't try to one up them. It's not a tick for tat. It's you don't need to prove what the past could show them. What you need to do is to stand and stay in the emotion that you're trying to get them to understand. So when those instances happen, you can say, I'm not here to convince you or to argue your point or go back and forth with this. I'm just here so that you may help me and help us with my feelings, because that didn't feel good, what just happened. And again, wanting someone to apologize, I learned this early on in therapy, and it was hard to hear it at first. And it took me several times through my sessions to really get the understanding that having someone apologize to you, or asking someone to apologize, or being stubborn by not receiving the apology, it comes from ego. You don't need to hear an apology from anyone. What you need is for them to do and you to be different, right? If I have a disagreement with my son and I'm staying, adamant on my stance or in my emotions, and not because I want him to apologize, the apology that I hear from him is for my purpose. It's not for his. And that's not fair to him, and it's very egotistical, right? That you just want someone to say they're sorry. I don't want him or anybody in my life to say they're sorry if they continue the same behavior. That's not nice and still doesn't feel good. So what I want is a changed, and what we want is a changed behavior. So when my son apologizes to me, or I apologize to him, often one that takes the high road for apologies, is that I tell him that not only am I sorry, but I will change my behavior and my tone or my attitude. I will change so that it doesn't happen again. And if it does happen again, I often say to him when we're in this situation, that if it does happen again, I want him to remind me, to say it's okay that I'm back at that place. But for me to know that when I am, it doesn't feel good for him. So that's an important part of any relationship, is again to be heard when we're expressing our needs, our emotional needs, or our wants and needs to be heard, seen, and felt. When something doesn't land right, and I tell somebody like, "Ooh, that wasn't good," or you showed up not in a way that was productive or healthy for me, and maybe we can do better or be different next time. Again, I'm not looking for an apology from them. It would be better for all of us, for me, when that happens, for me to say, I hear you, I understand, I will do differently next time instead of more, because it's not what I want. So again, back to the verb and back to the the word love and being in action. I think that I don't know, I haven't done enough research or enough observation on whether it's a male female thing about it, about how they receive or expect or want love. I know that we're all different, and even females versus females are different, but how they they receive it and expect it on a conditional, and do they give it on a conditional level versus an unconditional level, and what that means. So I'm going to really do some work and digest and talk to other people about that and their experiences. And so I remember when I was back in my early mid 20s, again, I had moved away from home and was experiencing a lot of things, and I was peeling the onion back and back to that conversation with David. And I was talking to him about love and how I was raised. And we were never told that our parents loved us. We never heard it. We just knew that it was in the room and in the house and in the family because they showed us, they provided for us, and that was their way of doing it, and their Christmas presents, and they were taking us on experiences and spending time with us, and it was great. But I never heard it growing up, and I remember standing in my kitchen. Again, I was my parents' kitchen, and I was probably 25, maybe 26. 28 years old, maybe. And I was saying to them, how come you never, I was asking them, how come you never say you love me? And my parents were both in the kitchen at the time. And the conversation was mostly between my mother and I. And she was more verbal than my father at times, especially in emotional situations. And her stance was, which we would all probably take the first stance on if we're not aware of it and self-trusting, is that it was, well, you know that we love you. You shouldn't have to hear it. And I was adamant because of my therapy of pushing and wanting to hear it from them and wanting to hear the words come out of their mouth. And I was at the point, again, this is another story, but I had some tragedy in my life and lost some great friends in a very tragic car accident unexpectedly. And that made me realize that I should have told those friends that I loved them more, that I should have, they knew that I did. They knew that I loved them because I spent time with them and I cared for them and I was present, but I wasn't verbal with it. I didn't say I love you enough to those men in my life who died in that car accident. And that made me want to hear it from my parents more. I'm going to get emotional now just saying it. And I remember standing in the kitchen, and the conversation was probably minutes long. It seemed like it was much longer because it wasn't loud. My parents and I never raised our voice, but we had our convictions, I guess is how I want to say it. It wasn't a bad tone. It was just maybe a bad angle of things. And so I was pushing my parents, my mother, again, the conversation was there. My father was standing next to my mother. I remember him having his hands on the counter behind him, and her, I wouldn't say toe to toe because we weren't close, but that's how the energy felt. We were trying to convince each other about the lack of me hearing or wanting to hear the words "I love you" from them, and her reasoning that it wasn't about the words, it was about what about how we were raised. I didn't need to hear it. It's just what I remember her saying. So finally, again, it was only minutes long. Again, it seemed like forever. And at the end, I think I wore them down. I think I finally guilted them into saying that they loved me. And it landed flat, of course, because it felt guilt-ridden. It felt like I had won the conversation or the fight that we were having, but I didn't, because I didn't hear it from pure emotion other than exhaustion and frustration and perhaps just giving up on their side. That it didn't feel the way I wanted the words "I love you" from my parents to come across. But what it did do that day, it was the aha moment, I think, in our relationship. I know in our relationship, and I think it actually kind of broadened through the house. It was like a rippling effect. It was when we suddenly started to feel a little bit more comfortable saying it out loud, a little bit more comfortable saying it when I arrived home on trips or left go back to my house, the 3,000 or 2,500 miles away from where I was raised. I would say that to them and they would say it back to me. So it became more comfortable. It started with the trips, and then it started with the phone calls, and then it started with the writing and letters and those types of things, that I heard it, I felt it, and it landed differently. It wasn't that they needed to do more. I didn't need more gifts. I didn't need more experiences from them. They had done great with that. What I needed from them, and which they participated in, because again, that conversation in the kitchen probably forced it, was what I needed from them was different. I needed them to hear, by them not telling me that they loved me. Again, didn't mean that they didn't love me. It just meant that I didn't hear it in the way that I needed to from them. That I needed to hear them say, I love you, in order for me to feel like they understood that not hearing it hurt. So that was a conversation I remember having. Again, I'm emotional about it now because I remember in the kitchen that day, and how it was a very difficult conversation. And like I said, it didn't last a long time, and it wasn't heated. My parents never raised their voice. They never swore at all, ever. My father's never, ever. My parents never swore, and never said anything in an angry tone. It was more of kind of just getting each other to a point of listening. And then we did. And finally, once it was finished and resolved and exhausted, I think we were all exhausted. I know I was exhausted from that conversation, that we were able to realize what the other party needed and was feeling and needed to feel from the relationship. So it was the aha moment, I think, from them. And for my adulthood, and when I became involved in other relationships, how I communicated my desire for, how I learn, how I feel, how I express my love, and how I feel safe when I receive it in certain ways from others. So those were really integral times. And I think part of that, and I give credit to David, we peeled the onion back a lot through my childhood and through a lot of the relationships, not only with the relationships of my childhood itself, but also with relationships of people that I had relationships with, the nucleus of the neighborhood. That was appealing the onion to get to how I felt being one of 22 or 20, whatever number of cousins that were on the same street, and the family dynamics that were all involved, and then the number of 9 of us in the same house, and how that felt, and then siblings. So I peeled a lot of onions, and I talk about that a lot, that you peel the onion back, but it isn't always about getting to the core of the inside of your onion. I think that that's an important process, and therapeutic way to go about it, and certainly through coaching and through therapy that helps. I think therapy is about your past. That's my opinion and my thought on it, that therapy deals with your past, your childhood, your past experience. And I think coaching deals with today and your future. It sets you up with a roadmap. And that's how I like to deal with my clients, is we talk about their past. We don't delve a lot into it. It's about what that created with them and the person that they are because of it. But I'm not here to invest a lot of time into their past. I'm here to understand it, and I'm here to see where they are today and help them get to where they need to be in the future, whether that's tomorrow or 6 months or 6 days or however long. So those are the things that we have to think about, is how we show up every day in relationships as the word love as a verb, and how the other person is feeling about how we're showing up. And if they're uncomfortable, is to express that to them in a healthy, productive manner, and hope that they understand it. Again, I like to say it's not about more. It's not about that. Most men and women conflicts, I think it's because they want more from their partners. They want more from their kids. They want more from their jobs, or more from their coworkers or friends or circle of influence. And it's not about more. It's about different, in my opinion. And that is my opinion, that I want to show up differently when things all the time, but especially when things aren't working. I don't want to show up the same. If I have the same conversation with my son or coworker or partner or anybody in my life that I have a relationship with, and I'm just constantly having the same conflict or same conversation or same thing, I feel that that's unproductive and unhealthy because they're not listening, right? You can raise your volume, people do, and certainly a lot of fights or trying to change somebody's convictions or stance on something. People tend to raise their volume, to argue louder. Arguing louder and raising your voice isn't an effective way. When we do that, people shut down. It's not effective at all. It's not about who can talk louder to be heard more. It's about how we can be heard and show up differently. It's about how they acknowledge me, my feelings as a participatory member, big word, a contributing member to that relationship. How I'm showing up. And yes, I'm not perfect. No one is. And I certainly have a lot of flaws and faults. And I hope every day I learn from them and I don't try to not make them the same mistake or the same flaws every single day. When they come up, I try to figure out why, what was triggering me, what was happening in that instance. And most of the time, it boils down to the person that I'm trying to have a conversation with or project with or relationship or whatever it is. I feel I'm just not being heard. I'm just not being understood. They're not understanding my experience of how things landed for me, how their actions or reactions or their trigger points landed for me. And that's so important because I'm not trying to, and I hope we can all get to this place. And it's again a daily choice to make sure that we change how we present and engage with people. But it's how when someone says something to me and I want to quickly respond that I don't. I take a step back. So I often put my hand on my heart when I'm in stressful situations or in a situation that's emotional to me, to one, to center myself and also just to breathe and not react. So those things happen. So the walls come down slowly. And once they start coming down, and once we realize how we can behave differently and try to not change people for more, but ask them for different. Ask us and ourselves how we can engage differently in relationships and how they can as well. How can we all participate different, right? We were raised, my relationships, they aren't, although I have relationships with my siblings, I'm not raising a child with a sibling of mine. I'm raising it with a partner, right? So they came from a different background than I did. So they're going to bring their background, their past patterns, their parental knowledge and influence, good and or bad, comes with them, right? So you have to remember that when they react in a situation, a parental one at this case, and that's what I was thinking of, that it's not only their stuff that they're bringing with them, but other people's from their history stuff. And so it doesn't always work. It's not how we need to be, is like we were raised ourselves, or like we those are just past patterns and we bring the good ones with us. I hope we all do. I say that to my son all the time, not all the time, but I do say it to him often, is just bring the good of people with you. Remember, acknowledge the bad or the stuff that doesn't work for you in relationships. Acknowledge that that person was triggered with fear or with control or with their past triggers or patterns. And just acknowledge that and know that when you're in that situation, when you're acting as a friend as they were, that you will do it differently. You don't have to choose their patterns, their posture, their tone, and their voice into what you need to do. Just bring the good stuff. Acknowledge the bad, bless it, and don't bring it forward, right? When I am with somebody that is a trying relationship for me or was trying. So my mother was a good example. I had some very difficult and trying times with her, as most daughters have with their mothers. And that's probably another million podcast there. But anyway, I had a woman that a dear friend that helped me. She was a woman about my mother's age, and she was just everything. She was as sweet as cherry pie and so different from my mother. And she had the qualities of the motherly figure that I wanted. And I spent a ton of time with her, and I loved her and I loved her influence. And she would often coach me as I went back to see my mother, or when I was in difficult situations or with difficult people, to just look them in the eye and just bless them. That's what she would say to me. Just don't get triggered. Just bless them. Just look at them and bless them. Because if you do it with an energy and an impact of positivity and influence from a blessing or a love, or from a centering of a different place than you are when those things happen, you tend to not be triggered. It's like you're putting your hand on your heart again and you're centering yourself. So that was a great lesson I learned from Betty about my mother when I went home. It was often hard to do because, again, it's hard to not be in a familial area, familiar home, and a familiar pattern of things, and not be triggered into past patterns. But it did take me a while, and I often kidded Betty about it, that I didn't do as well as she would have hoped, or some days I did better than I thought I would have. So I appreciated the advice that she gave me about blessing people that I don't want to have that experience with, right? There are people in my life now that I'm friendly with, right? There are people we all should be friendly with. We should be friendly with everybody, but that doesn't mean that I'm friends with them. And when I come in contact with them, I acknowledge them, but I often don't engage with them in a relational type way. I mean, I'm in a relationship with them, of course, but I don't give them my world. I don't give them my emotions. I look at them, I listen to them, I politely engage with them in a warm and friendly, compassionate, and kind manner. And then I bless them and I close the conversation and walk away, knowing that I don't need to understand their point of view. I don't need to understand their views. So those are things I want you to think about. I want you to think about that love doesn't transform us by accident. Someone shows up in our lives at the right time because our body, soul, and heart and mind need that person to be in our lives, right? There's songs and everything. Are they there for a season or a reason? And I like to look at everybody that's in my life for a reason, that I try to realize what I can learn from them and what I can share with them and what I can love with them, for them, and in them. Again, all action words, because they're coming into my life at that period because they're supposed to be there, right? I believe in cosmic connections. I believe in that we're all here for a purpose, and we're all show up at the time in our lives when we're supposed to, and that nothing is unplanned, and that the universe has a plan for us, and that's why people show up at the time and place that they do, and we have to think about why they're there, why what we're supposed to be there for. So again, I want to let you think about that today, and I want to tell you that there's more to come on this, because this is a great topic, and we're going to dive into it, and about love and how it is and how we can expand on it and live in it. But I want to thank you today for showing up for yourself and for me. This has been great. I love these days that we spend our time together, and I hope you do as well. So please spend time with me every week here. Subscribe, send it off to people. Find me on your local any streaming systems and services that you have. But thanks for listening. And until next time, keep chasing purpose.